Who do you think the most important person is in your writing experience? Well, I hope you answered that it's you because you're the writer, but you're also the leader of the entire process. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as we go through our visit today. I would suggest that the most important thing that you are aware of is that you need to know yourself. So, in my experience through the writing process, I've found that there is just a huge amount of information out there. It's great. The writing community is very giving of their time and their energy and certainly their ideas and experiences. And so, especially as a new writer and new publisher, there is a huge amount of information out there, whether that's from a personal coach or editor or a blog or a podcast or conferences or books. There's just a huge amount out there. But the challenge is understanding which advice you take and which advice you might pass on. And in order to manage that, I found that it really starts with understanding who you are and what your strengths are and what your aspirations are through this writing process. And from that, it will really help you to select what is the best part of the advice and what you decide to pass on. So before we go further, I would be curious as to where you are in your own writing process. So some people I'm sure that are listening in are aspiring writers. They're just thinking about it. Some are new writers and just beginning the journey. Some may be near their completion of their first book. Others may be in the publishing phase, or many others that are joining in today have already published books and they're authors that are working on subsequent projects. In order to really understand who we are and how we select the different advice along the way, I think it's important to just use the experiences that we have throughout various parts of our life. So I started writing in earnest a few years ago as I neared the completion of about 30 years of work in the corporate world. And so I've thought oftentimes about different experiences along the way and in my work life and how those have helped me in my writing life. And so one of the things I have thought about is probably in the middle of my career as a relatively new team leader, I felt like I could do everything. I felt like I knew how I wanted it to be done, and so I tried to do everything. And I realized that I wasn't really being a good leader. The team wasn't doing well, we weren't meeting our objectives, and it just really wasn't the right way to run a team. And from that kind of reflective process, I realized that none of us know everything and none of us do everything perfectly well. And so the key for me in my work job was to understand what my strengths were and what my gaps were. And as such, to form a dream team. So the dream team would be myself along with people that complemented my strengths and also filled some of the gaps that I had, whether they were technical gaps or relationships or other types of skill sets that our team needed. And together we could go much further than any one individual person could as a team. And so I would certainly advocate that for us writers as well. When I've kind of taken that learning and adapted it into my writing, it's really helped for me to understand and take a deeper look into what do I really enjoy and have a passion for, and what do I have the skill set for, and what other things do I need other people to help out with. And maybe there are skill sets that I want to learn and be able to do myself later, or maybe there are things that I really don't enjoy and I want to surround myself with people that have those strengths. And together, again, we can really exceed expectations. So with that dream team approach, I would like to delve a little bit further into what does it really mean to know yourself. And for me, there's kind of 4 steps that I have looked at. First is self-awareness. So with regard to writing, it's really understanding ourselves and why we're writing. So what is the reason why we've decided to write, and where does our passion lie? And if we really understand that, then that can help drive our ambitions for writing and what things we enjoy and what things we don't enjoy. I found that most of the time my strengths come from things that I have passion for. And the things that I really don't enjoy a lot or I tend to push off are probably the things I don't have a passion for or a strength of. And those are the things I probably need to lean towards other people on my team for. So that would be the first thing. The second thing is really to embrace our strengths. So knowing our strengths and embracing our strengths. Many people may know those right off the bat, but I would encourage you to take a few seconds here in the middle of our discussion and just think about what are the strengths that we bring to the table. And it may not necessarily be a particular writing skill, but just strengths that we have in our life, whether from work or from home or other hobbies. And to understand what those strengths are will help you in your writing experience. So let's take a couple of minutes and jot down on a piece of paper some of the strengths that you think of and maybe a gap or two that you're aware of that will help you in the process of writing. So hopefully you jotted down a few things, and that list certainly may change. It may evolve over time. You may have opportunities to think about that further. For me, a couple of the things that I think are strengths is, for myself, is one, determination. So I'm very goal-oriented and I'm very determined. So my coach early on in my writing experience told me that a lot of people have great stories and a lot of people are great writers, but not all of them finish their work, publish it, and share it with the world. I never really was too concerned about that because I knew that with a timetable and a goal, I would get there. And I think that's keeps me pushing forward through some of the more challenging periods. The other strength that I really thought about was structure, and that's kind of tied to the first one, but I'm very regimented structure-wise. I like to look at tasks and approach different tasks, and that has helped me not only in the writing aspect, but in many of the other phases that we'll talk about in a few minutes. The gap that I have that is most glaring is that I'm just a new writer. I've never published anything before, and so those are things that I recognize I need to learn. And that's where the dream team comes into play, because I need to surround myself with some other people that have good information and then leverage my strengths to understand which information and suggestions I want to adapt into my own writing process. So once I take all those strengths and leverage them in the different aspects of writing, then the fourth item would be to get out of that comfort zone that we're establishing with our own strengths and occasionally dip our toe in the water. So I know I get very comfortable with things that I love to do and that think I'm skilled and able to do very well. But I also know that I learn and grow by trying new things. And so I think that's a fourth thing that is important in the writing process, is to try new things. It doesn't mean that you have to try things that are radically different. It doesn't mean you have to try a bunch of stuff at the same time. And frankly, you may try some things and decide, that's not really for me. I tried, I looked into it, I practiced it a little bit, and it really didn't enjoy it, so I'm going to pass on that. But other things that you try, when you dip your toe in that water, the ripple effect will change the way you approach your writing and your life. And so it's worth always trying to look at new and different ways of approaching the writing challenge that we've all got in front of us. So with those four aspects of knowing ourselves, let's look at the different phases of the writing journey. So if you're anything like me, when I first started to write a few years ago, I really thought I was just coming here to write, and I wasn't sure exactly what that meant, but I didn't think anything about the other phases of writing and the journey that I had in front of me. Now I've realized that there's other parts to it, and so I need to be prepared for those as well. So let's take them one at a time. First of all, writing. So I mentioned this a little bit earlier as far as knowing ourselves, but that's really critical in the writing. Some people I know will approach writing as, how can I make the most amount of money for my writing? What do I think will be marketable and sell? The best way to approach writing is to connect with your passion. What do you really enjoy? What do you love? What are you most interested in? What do you have experiences in? What do you read? What kind of books do you read? That's probably a good place to start as far as what you might want to write about. And if you do that, then the content will show, and it'll show the passion that you have and the strength of the information that you have about that topic. And later down the road, with strong content and a strong dream team that can help you to put that information out into a published book, then the readers will come and the financial benefits will also arrive. but I think it has to start with knowing what our passion is and writing about that. Second aspect is editing. So the one thing I would really suggest for people around editing is to keep editing and writing very separate. A lot of people will try and edit along the way because when we write, we tend to just throw things on paper and it's sloppy but very creative. And sometimes that can be frustrating and we feel like I need to tie that all up into nice smooth prose. But the problem I find is writing is very right-brained and editing is very left-brained. And so on the right-brain side of it, when we're writing, we're creative. We're letting things come out of our brain and flow onto paper. And it may look sloppy, but it's intuition and it's initiative to try and put those stories onto paper. If we interrupt that by saying, well, now I want to make sure that this sentence flows well into the next sentence and the paragraph makes a lot of sense, then we break that flow from the right brain. And if we keep interrupting the flow from the creative side of ourselves, then we stunt that creative effort to begin with. So rather than sit down and try and do writing and editing at the same time, or even on the same day or week, I would suggest writing the entire draft manuscript. Get it all out on paper. Give yourself the flexibility to say, I know that there's going to be a lot of editing. I know that it's not perfect by any means, but I'm getting a lot of great stuff on paper and I'll edit it later, so I'm not worrying about it now. Then later you can come back and edit through it. I probably spent 3 times more time editing than I did writing, but I was able to get it all on paper to begin with. Then I edited it. I employed other professional editors to look at it and beta readers to get many different eyes on it so that they could help me to flange up the editing aspect of it. And if you take those two parts and put them together, then you end up with a sharp manuscript. So I think it's easier on ourselves and more enjoyable process to separate those into 2 distinct segments. The third part of the writing journey is publishing. So again, something I hadn't really thought about when I first picked up the pen and started to jot down my thoughts for my first book. Publishing, you might hear this in many ways. There's generally 3 ways you can approach publishing, and we could spend hours talking about the different ways to publish. But in a nutshell, there's traditional publishing, the big publishing houses in New York, like Simon & Schuster as an example. There's self-publishing or independent publishing, same thing, where basically you're doing everything or contracting with freelance contractors to do practically every aspect of the publishing journey. And then there's hybrid publishers in the middle where you pay them some amount for them to do a lot of that, the publishing part of it. And so once again, I would strongly suggest that we lean back on what our strengths are. So depending on what your strengths and your aspirations are will lead you towards one avenue or the other. You know, if you're a detail person, you may like the self-publishing. If you really are hands-off or you don't have the time to do that, you might like the traditional or the hybrid. If you are want to really have control over the process, maybe self-publishing. If you really want to lean on other people to help guide you through the process, hybrid might be the right way to do it. And so we won't be able to go through all the details of those in this discussion here today, but I would certainly suggest that you think about what your aspirations and strengths are. Talk to people that are publishing or have published in each of those 3 areas that you're considering. Listen to podcasts. There's a lot of podcasts out there that will provide you with different opinions, and then use those opinions marked against your strengths to decide which approach you want to pursue. If you pick the right one, you're going to enjoy that process. For me, I mentioned earlier, one of my strengths was structure. And so I realized as I was going through the process of evaluating my publishing choices that I really liked project management. It was one of the things I did a lot of in my career before writing. And as I understood more about what self-publishing and indie publishing involved, I realized that I could actually enjoy that part of the process a lot. So I enjoyed the tasks, I enjoyed the timelines, learning, negotiating with contractors or vendors, and so it was really right up my alley. So I decided to self-publish, and I came to this whole journey because of the writing, but I enjoy the publishing aspects equally as much in many ways. So if you can find whichever path that is that you enjoy most, then it's going to be a very fulfilling process for you. The fourth aspect in the writing journey is marketing. And so it's fourth, but actually it's one of the things that needs to start early on. So marketing is how do we get our message out there? How do we build an audience that will eventually have interest in our book and our message and so forth? And so you certainly don't want to wait until the book is completed to do that. I would suggest once you get your manuscript kind of well framed and you understand where you're going with that, then it's time to start building up a marketing program that will move all the way through to a book launch and beyond. And here again, for marketing, think about what you really enjoy and what your strengths are. For me, my strengths and my enjoyment and passion tend to lie more on the writing side, on the written word. And so I started a website and a blog early on. I've done a lot of social media and Facebook groups, and also press releases and endorsement solicitation, things like that, which I'm comfortable with, I'm learning about, but I feel like I'm comfortable with that. And at the same time, every once in a while, I'm dipping my toe into other things like interviews, radio shows, or discussions like this today in order to stretch, learn, and grow. But my base is focused around those areas that are my strengths. And from that, it's been an interesting journey on the marketing side that I'm excited about as we start to launch the book here in the next couple of months. So in summary, I think that understanding what our aspirations are and what our strengths are through this whole process is going to be the most important thing. And if you can follow your heart and your conscience as far as determining how you approach the four aspects of writing, then it's going to be an experience of a lifetime. So I would encourage you to give yourself some time and space to think about that and remind yourself as you go along the way and you get lots of different advice that this is kind of where you get to make your own decisions and chart your own course. So thanks for the time, and I look forward to hearing from you on our blog, www.beyondintroversion.com. Any comments or questions are welcome, and happy writing. Thanks.